Part 2 in our micro series. Here we go. Turkey chokes. Thought it was chickens. Where we last left off, I mentioned that a choke on a shotgun is a alteration to the gun that can be permanent or added in, that takes whatever hundreds of different measurements you can do throughout the barrel of a shotgun and constricts it again to some other damn diameter, so that nowhere in a gun barrel that is for a shotgun is there a standardized real caliber. Because there can't be. A shotgun fires a bunch of little pellets. The smallest size it can have, hypothetically, is whatever the smallest shot size is. Basically, you want to keep it above 9mm or something, I guess, maybe. Depends on the shot. Anyway, common choke of 30-point constriction, that means out of whatever diameter it is, if you reduce it by 30 thousandths of an inch, you can get a 70% of the pellets from an average buckshot firing into an area that is usable at a specific distance. This is basically a way of measuring how packed together you can get it. Now, why wouldn't you just want them all hit in one spot? Because it's a shotgun. The reason it's called a scattergun is that you might be shooting something on purpose with this big-ass gun, 12 gauge or whatever, that's really tiny. Tiny things are hard to hit at a distance, especially if they're moving. If you know a bird is going to move from here to here, you can aim here, just right in the middle. If you know the spread will be approximately that space, and fire. By the time the bird takes off, it'll be somewhere in here and get hit at least once or twice, so you can collect the bird and eat it. That's what it's based on. But if you're hunting something that's going to be charging at you, you don't want it to have a spread of any kind. You just want to hit it with a slug. Basically, you make a shotgun into a big sparking gun. Not a BMG, but a BFG. So why would anybody bring this up? Well, here's the funny thing. During the Depression in the United States, people found ways of taking a shotgun and making it into a field expedient rifle. Not really, but almost. By doing all sorts of things I'm going to mention. None of these are illegal because they were necessary for people to collect food. And the ATF, during the Depression, was trying to deal with bad guys, but also dealt with literally thousands and thousands of people saying, I need to collect food. And they were out shooting whatever. And they did all sorts of weird things with a gun, and prosecuting them was a prohibitively stupid thing to do. Because it's like they're trying to eat. So applying arbitrary rules, Californicating it, was a bad idea. No, California wasn't a big problem back then, right? Anyway, here we go. So to improve your likelihood of getting a bunch of pellets, not bullets, to hit a specific spot at a distance, you could do a constriction on the barrel and an expansion. You could overbore and then underbore it. The idea was to create a kind of a wave-shaped effect where the pellets would spread out, absorb as much inertia as possible, and then you'd compact them some way to where they would come out and come in a beeline to hit at a further distance, but still have enough spread. You could customize how big of a pattern you had. The standard is a man-sized target. If you're not aware of it, the idea is to hit something about the same size as a human being's trunk, which also corresponds to the hit range that you want to use for hitting a deer, approximately. A small deer. So because of the deer standard, that's what we heard about it when I was a kid, also for shooting turkey, you wanted to keep the spread to where the majority, or about half, 75%, would hit. So, if you have 0.13 millimeters, or 5/1000ths of an inch of constriction, that would give you a 75 centimeter, 30-inch diameter pattern at 20 meters, or 22 yards. If, however, you go to 30 points, this is points of constriction, or 30 thousandths of an inch, or 0.75 millimeters of constriction, and it doesn't matter what the barrel is, it will create, this is for a 12 gauge, but other barrels it's going to give you totally different results. A smaller barrel, this is a much more extreme change. This would give you a 75 centimeter, 30-inch diameter pattern at 35 meters, or 38 yards instead of 22 yards. Well, more is better, right? Well, but that means that you're going to be having a very narrow range this big, 8 feet away from you, which means you can miss a bird. If it's this big, you're not going to miss the bird as easy. It's literally spray and pray mode in one shot. And I got to point out something. Every time you pull a trigger on a legal firearm in the United States, it should only dispense with 1 bullet. Unless it's a shotgun, in which case it's throwing a bunch of 9mm balls at you. Yeah. But they're not fired all in one, you know. Okay, what if I make an array of 500 rifles firing 22 caliber bullets? That's illegal. No, actually it isn't. Because if they come out at the same time, it's considered shotgunning. The ATF had to deal with these rules, and they don't make any sense for this reason. It's one shot. You've emptied your clip magazine. There are beehive arrays that'll fire 20 bullets at once, 22 caliber bullets out of a tear gas gun. Somebody invented that. Think about that. Non-lethal device turned into a bizarrely lethal thing, but it shoots 22s. Or you could just use a shotgun and be done with it. So let's move on. Destructive device, asterisk, void where prohibited, some restrictions apply. UK firearms ammunition law says a shotgun shell has to have 5 or more projectiles. Can't have 1 or 2, and it can't have a small number. And they have to be .36 inch, 9mm, 36 caliber, diameter, or less to be legal. No single projectile slug is legal unless you get a permit for it and request. Basically, you have to ask permission rather than begging forgiveness, and that's the rule. What about slugs coming out of a shotgun? Nothing wrong with that in the United States because of that grandfathering from the Depression. In the United States, any firearm with a rifle barrel more than 12.7 or 0.5 inches, 50 cal, or I forgot the gauging, is legally considered a destructive device. Except if it was a firearm originally designed as a shotgun, and you can convert it to fire slugs, or you make them because it's Depression. If you add rifling to it, or change the barrel out, or buy a shotgun where you push a button, take out the barrel, put in another barrel, click it in place, and you can now fire slugs because it's a fully rifled barrel, because it's a 50 caliber anti-aircraft barrel that you welded onto the little tab to put it in. Arnold. As long as the bore diameter matches or is close to, kind of, sorta, the chamber diameter and the shell diameter. But you can convert a 12-gauge shotgun to a 50 caliber BMG overbore by deliberately putting in a sub-caliber adapter that changes the interior diameter of your 12-gauge to a rifled barrel that's 49.999 caliber by squeezing the bullet down. How do you do that? Let's move on. You can convert a shotgun by, this is an exception for shotguns, you're allowed to put a muzzle device on them using threads, a threaded barrel, internal barrel only, so it's in the pathway of what you're firing because it's a choke tube. And a choke tube can be rifled because it can be done on purpose for one previous usage. This was a legitimate one. Sometimes you got a gun barrel, shotgun barrel, that made the pattern for the bullets way too small and you couldn't hit something unless you're a really good shot. And if you're hunting and you're just trying to acquire food, no. So what they would do is they would take a rifled barrel, literally for a machine gun, grind it down to where they could jam at the end and use the rifling to respin the bullet, pellets, not bullets, towards spray out wider. Yeah, and that's where you got the blunderbuss with the behuga horn on the front. It created a mechanical and aerodynamic effect that would cause the pellets to spread slightly. So you could start off with a really small diameter, throwing rocks, and they would come out in a spread. And anyway, it stays a shotgun even though you made it into a big-ass rifle because reasons and Depression and hunting deer. Because the other thing, if you wound a deer with hitting it with one stupid 12-gauge pellet, that's illegal. You have to take it out. So they allowed for people to use an interesting method. It's called a cut shell. You can make these solid slug shells, but the DIY version of this was rather interesting. You can make wax slugs by taking all of the, or you can make a sabooted or bag round, sand round, or you just partially poke it with a knife or whatever at a specific point on the shotgun, and it would fire the entire shotgun shell front end out of the barrel. And it would only work in barrels that were straight, which means they had no choke to them, so they were kind of worthless for this. So you'd have one or two of those for coup de grace shots to take out a deer immediately. If it's wounded, but you can get to it, you load it with that and you fire, because you can get within range if it isn't running. A 24.8 gram, 25 gram, 383 grain, 0.875 ounce or 7/8 ounce 12-gauge shotgun slug, that's the lightest load that you can find normally, cheaply, is equivalent to a birdshot payload. But it has a, with that you have a 3 to 4 inch group of individual shots fired sequentially at 100 freaking yards and a 400-yard max range. Which also makes them safer because they also, if you don't overpower them, they can't go far enough. They'll start dropping immediately because aerodynamically they're complete crap after a certain number of feet. But you can make them to where they're bullet shaped. So they can be short or long range-ish. 400 yards is considered pretty long range for a shotgun, obviously. But if you miss, you miss. Versus shotguns, which have an effective range of maybe 100 yards, 50 yards. The impact at 1,800 feet per second was 2,755 foot-pounds, or 3,735 joules. Pretty close to the 2,800 feet per second, nearly double, not really double, but very high, from 150 grain 30-06 bullet, because you have to run it faster to get the same amount of impact. Speed and energy at point of impact, squared, yada yada. The faster you make a teeny bullet go, the more impact. But if you use a lower weight round, it doesn't make as much noise, because you know, you can make it go supersonic, but yeah, they'll hear it just before it hits. I understand that. But if you don't want it to go a mile away, an average shotgun, when it fires a pellet, each individual pellet is aerodynamically crap, but it can go a mile. So for safety reasons, solid slugs or other creative rounds were encouraged, which is the reason there's so many of them. The shotgun bores, there's like half a dozen popular ones that are really in use. The type of bullets are measured in inches. The type is basically solid slugs, 4 or 5 varieties, and pellet sizes, about a dozen. But it does get a lot simpler than trying to do the bullets I mentioned in the other video. There are hundreds of variations of it, where you start off with an elephant shell for firing a solid slug and have it go down to something that looks like a pen point. Stainless steel barrels have a longer life than traditional 4140 or 440 or whatever chrome molybdenum steel barrels. The 10,000 psi 12 gauge from a 2 3/4 inch shell shotgun is typical. The SAMI max rating for the same thing is 35,000 psi for your average rifle, pistol, and 60,000 for a rifle, or vice versa. Again, a pistol can have a higher pressure level than a rifle. See also all the others below for things to look up for further information. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that.